self-discovery. A year later, it became a journey of remembering. Yet, what I know now is back then I was still seeking. And what I've come to know now is that it's the journey of seeking that brings us the silent, slow stillness of acceptance. And therein lies our own innate wisdom. It's my mission now to eradicate the glorification of hustle culture, as it was my drive in entrepreneurship that led to a greater whole, and that's because I was outsourcing my sovereignty rather than looking within. So let this be your invitation to take a deep breath in and remember that at any time we can shift our thoughts and our feelings to create the outer world in which we wish to live. Soul Seekers, it's time to grow. Let's go. What's up, fam, and welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. I am your host, as always, Sam Kabert, and in this episode, we're talking all things relationships. So I had this guy, Kute Blackson, on my podcast a couple of years ago. It was actually podcast number 179. And I've sent that podcast that I did with Kute probably to so many people that it's got to be the number one podcast that I've recorded that I've sent to people, because it has just been that profound. And that's why I asked him back on the pod. So happy and stoked and grateful to do a 2.0 with him. Kute is absolutely amazing. He's shared the stage with Oprah. The guy is on next level in terms of like a spiritual and transformational teacher and speaker. So you guys are going to learn so much. In this one, we go deep on relationships. Like I said, one of the things that you're going to hear from Kute are his 3 pillars to a relationship, and we unpack each of those as well. If you're new to the show, please consider subscribing, rating, and reviewing. It helps the show grow. My goal with the Soul Seeker, I shouldn't say goal, my aim or intention with the Soul Seeker podcast is to help raise the collective consciousness from this fallen state. So if you're down with that mission, easy way to give payback or pay it forward, if you will, is to leave a rating and review, because by doing so, it helps others discover the podcast so they can benefit from the wisdom of these guests as well. And as always, if you'd like to go deeper with me, I have my free Breath Club community. You can find the link to that in the show notes. That's where I lead breathwork every single week. And other than that, enjoy this episode with Kute Blackson. Here we are back again for another episode of the Soul Seeker podcast, and sitting down with Kute Blackson, a returning guest. This is episode number 274. The first time, Kute, you were on the pod, it was back in 179. Wow. And this podcast has been going for 6 years now. And I'm like, is that math even right? But either way, great to have you back. Something new that I've been doing in the past year. So it's been 2 years since you've been on the show. It's just grounding with 3 breaths. So if you'd like, we can close down our eyes. And for all of you listening, always be mindful of what you're doing. Don't close your eyes if you're not in a situation to do so, but you can always breathe with us. So having said that, just shutting down the eyes, sitting up straight, and through the nose, inhaling all the way up, sipping in a bit more air at the top, and sighing it out. Another big inhale all the way up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. And sighing it out. One last one, big inhale up. Sipping in a bit more air at the top. Holding the breath here, just pausing. And sighing it out. Flickering the eyes open, letting the breath return to its natural state. And here we are for this episode. Kute, I am stoked to have you on the podcast. 2 years ago when you came on, I've shared that podcast as much as I've shared any of these 200 plus going on 300 podcasts or more. And you just dropped so much wisdom. So it's great to have you on the show again. One of the things that we talked about a lot in the previous episode is relationships, and really like getting curious of what's coming up with you as opposed to focusing on that other person. Let's just dive straight into it. When I bring up this big topic of relationships, what's coming up for you right now?
Wow. Everything is relationship. We're all in relationship all the time. But we think that we're in relationship with something else and something other. But when you can really understand that what appears to be something other than yourself that you're in relationship with is a manifestation of yourself, is an expression of yourself, is a dimension of yourself, ultimately at the deepest level is yourself. You start seeing the deeper oneness, the inherent oneness in all things. And I think that's the real foundation of true relationship, is when you realize that at the deepest level, we are all one. And I think from that deeper realization of oneness, when you have a relationship that is not based on the illusion of separation, it transforms everything, because you could say love is the inherent recognition of the oneness that you are, the oneness of all things. Then in relationship, you're not coming from a place of trying to get love or validation from something outside of yourself that appears to be outside of yourself. And so much of the suffering in relationships comes because we have this illusion that we are separate. I'm separate from you, and I'm separate from you, and I'm separate from you, and you're separate from me. And so we end up making the other person the source of our loving, the other person the source of our happiness, the other person the source of our beingness, when the truth is there really is no separation, you know. And so when we tap into that realization that we are one, then true, I think, love emerges. And when we come from that place, rather than try to get to that place or get something from another person that we think is going to give us the love that we didn't get, then it transforms our relating. And I think then we can much more just be with each other and be present with each other and truly love each other, versus control and manipulate and try to get and attain and achieve and overpower. And, there's so much more freedom there.
Yeah, I love that so much, and I've adopted this practice of just like in the morning setting the attention that when I move throughout my day, can I move through my day with curiosity of seeing others as a reflection of myself? And
Mm.
it's amazing how that just shifts me into embodiment and alignment, and then the synchronicities increase. And for me,
Mhm.
that helps with like compassion as well. Like when normally instead I might be feeling a little irritated in a situation, I can be like, oh, this is, I think that's the part that most people struggle with. I think by nature, and at least my own personal spiritual journey, I've come to this more understanding and patience, really. What can people do that are just hearing about this for the first time or trying to adopt a practice, and they still have like those irritations coming up, like because it's easy for us to say like, oh, see,
Yeah,
it's another version of yourself, but
yeah. I think irritations are normal and natural when you're triggered, right? Or I think irritation is even mild, because when you're
yeah.
pissed off, mad, upset, frustrated, triggered, aggravated, like want to pull someone's hair out, hating someone. Uh, okay, on one level, we think it's about the other person, and the truth is, let's start from the foundation up. Relationships really are a mirror manifestation of yourself, and you attract people into your life that reflect you aspects of yourself that you most need to heal, integrate, learn, make peace with. And
Mhm.
so we think it's about the other person, and as a result, we try to change the other person, and we never experience freedom, and then we're always dependent on another person being different or another person changing in order for us to be happy. That's a recipe for suffering. That is to live in hell. So I think when we can just start from the foundation of, oh, there really is no relationship out there. Everyone I attract is mirroring to me and showing me something about myself. What do I like what I see? What are they reflecting? When we can then own that, because when we like, no, it's you, Sam. No, it's you. It's then we kind of split off, create separation. We split off and we project onto another person. Often, what is our disowned or some part of ourselves that we are not acknowledging, not owning, we're afraid of making peace with, right? And so we're disowning and we're kind of splitting off from a part of ourselves and just, I make it about you and I'm triggered about you. But it's never really ultimately about the other person. It seems to be, but it's not. And so I think when we can just start off and just go, okay, it's not about the other person, then I think we can shift into looking in the mirror and beginning to take responsibility. Because if you're always making it about the other person, then you end up coming from a place of like, I'm upset because you did ABC, and I'm triggered and upset, irritated because you are doing XYZ. And if you would just stop doing XYZ, I wouldn't be irritated. I wouldn't be happy. And so we come from this victim perspective without even realizing, because we really believe our own nonsense. We believe our own irritation. And so from that place, what we end up doing is we focus on trying to change the other person, make the other person different. We control them, we manipulate them, we get upset at them, we do all sorts of gyrations to try to get the other person to not do that thing so that we don't feel irritated inside. And that is a recipe for giving your power away and feeling disempowered. It's a recipe for suffering. If you're needing someone to be some other way, which we all do in some way, if you're needing someone to change, be different, not do that, in order for you to not feel the irritation, the upset, the trigger, you're a slave. They control you. They own you. They run you. You have no power. You are just a prisoner, right? So that's what we have to realize. So if you realize that, then you can take responsibility and shift rather than focusing on what you're doing or what the other person's doing or not doing. We have to turn the focus back and take self-responsibility and look at, I am triggered. I am irritated. I am upset. And if we're willing to turn that focus and look at the irritation, look at the upset, deal with the upset, deal with the irritation, deal with the hurt, deal with the pain. I no longer make it about you. I start making it about me and this irritation inside. Then I can actually deal with this irritation inside and shift it and heal it and release it and clear it. Because yes, it is true that the other person might be doing ABC, right? The other person might be triggering you in some way, but that doesn't mean they are the source of the triggering. Often we make the other person responsible and the source of the trigger. And pretty much most of the time, they are not the source of the trigger. The reason we got irritated, the reason we got hurt, the reason we got upset, the reason we're flipping out and going crazy is not because of them. They did something that triggered the irritation that was already inside of us, the soreness that was already inside of us. When we realize that, we start shifting the game. Oh, you mean they are not the source of my irritation? The irritation was inside of me. There was something inside of me already. And yes, they pushed the button. Yes, they said something. All that they did was activate what was already there way before that person even did that thing. So on one level, they're blessing you because they're showing you where inside of you, you are not free. They are highlighting to you where you have not healed a wound, a pain, a hurt, a resentment, a frustration, a heartbreak, something from your childhood. They're showing you the part of you that actually still needs some healing and still needs some compassion and loving. And if you can flip the direction and not focus on them, but flip the direction and focus on the irritation inside, the pain inside, the wound inside, and learn how to bring loving and compassion to that part, then healing can happen. Then that upset, that hurt, that irritation can soften and loosen and sort of relax and maybe even dissolve, so that maybe when they still do what they do, or they don't do what they do, they don't call you in the way that you would like. They don't say you look beautiful today in the way that you would like, it doesn't activate your fears or your hurt or your irritation in the same way. They still might do what they do, but you've removed the it's kind of like having a gun. They still might pull the trigger, but you've removed the bullets. And I think that's where true inner freedom happens. And
Mm,
then you're less reactive. Then you're less, then you're more able to be in compassion for yourself, and you're more able to be in compassion for the other person, regardless of what they're doing or what they're not doing. But when you're activated and irritated like a puppet, then you don't have compassion for yourself, and you definitely won't have compassion for someone else, because you'll be trying to get them to be some other way so you can feel peace. And that's no way to live. And so I would say true freedom is making that shift where you stop focusing on what the other person is doing or not doing, and you start focusing on the upset and the hurt and what's underneath that, and healing that and dealing with that. That's, I would say, the freedom. And that would shift how you are in relationship with people. And that will shift your ability to be love in the world.
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by emotions and unsure how to move through them? Sam created the Breath Club to help you find calm and clarity. In this free online community, Sam teaches how to regulate your nervous system through breath work and process emotions effectively. Did you know that most emotions only last 90 seconds when you fully allow yourself to feel them? This is called the 90-second rule, and it's a powerful tool backed by science for emotional healing. Each week, Sam hosts live calls to guide breathwork practices and create real connection. You'll also get access to an online course and pre-recorded breathwork videos. The link to join is in the show notes.
So good. This is why I was stoked to have you back on the podcast. All of that is so good. And this advice that you touched on briefly in the last podcast that we're unpacking more helped me so much in my life. Right after we had our podcast, within a month or so, my relationship that I was in imploded, and I
Wow.
put everything that we're talking about to the test for myself. And that was so helpful for me to just reflect and go deeper on, like, I could say my role in it, but not necessarily my role in it in like the physical world, but maybe like from a karmic perspective of what you're alluding to, what you're saying essentially, and finding the gratitude and the blessing in it. My question for you is, like, that's one thing in, like, say, a breakup, right? That type of relationship. What about like that couple that's been together and been married for years, and they're going counseling and they're both doing the work, but like maybe one of them is not holding up to their end? Like, what? So it's not like the person is mad at that person, they're holding their part, but they're maybe not irritated, they're frustrated, they're disappointed, and they're just like, I wish this could be another way. Like, how would this apply to that?
Yeah, but if you're in a relationship, there's still a mirror. That person is still a mirror to you. They're still reflecting things to you about yourself. They're still uh,
Well, let's put it this way. I agree. So if the other person is not changing, but that's changing within ourselves, so then we're like, okay, I can see them this way. The way I'm viewing it is, like, at least from my lived experience, right? Like in a relationship, I'm like, I can see that person this way. I can move on with my life and I can address those things. But in a relationship, it's like, okay, so is this person just always going to be that way? Even if every
yeah.
time I look at them, I'm going to do my inner work, but they're not going to do theirs,
Yeah, but here's the thing: you have to ask yourself. Well, I've still attracted a person who's not doing their inner work, who's
Mhm.
not willing to do that inner work, and what does that reflect to me about myself? And either
Oh, that's good.
right,
Yeah.
and so it's still a mirror, and
Yeah.
it shows you, like, wow, what inside of me, it, if the mirror is the mirror and the mirror doesn't lie, then you can say, well, I've changed myself, but the mirror hasn't changed. It doesn't work that way. There's still something, either maybe what part of you doesn't want them to change. What part of you
Mm,
is afraid that they will change? Maybe there's some part of you subconsciously that you say you want them to shift, but deep down you really don't want them to shift because of what that might mean for you in the
mm,
dynamic, right? And so there's all of, like, there was one couple I knew that deep down she didn't really want her husband to get fit and healthy and lose weight, even though she did, but she didn't want to. because
And,
deep down that would kind of be a little threatening for her, and she felt a bit more secure that he was unhealthy and a bit chubby and a bit fat and all of these things. And so deep down we have to look at, wow, the fact that this person isn't willing to change, what does that show me about myself? What is this reflecting to me about what I feel? What is there some way I actually don't want to change? And when we can own that, there's a couple of things that shifts our relationship to relationship and the other person. Now, with that said, it might shift if we truly are doing our healing and we're shifting inside. That will either shift the relationship and the other person will gravitate out of our life if truly we're no longer a vibrational match, or it will shift our internal feeling because we've let go of things, and then even though they haven't changed, our relationship to the person will change. So we will find ourselves to be able to be much more patient with their quirks or the way they are and the way they're not changing. We'll be able to be more patient, more understanding, more willing. Our reactivity to them being what they are has shifted. Now, if what they're doing or the way they're being is really detrimental, right? And the ways that they're not changing is really abusive, detrimental, then you might be left with the reality of having to come into true acceptance of where they are at and then making a choice to leave or restructure the relationship, right? So these are the choices. Either they will change, either you will change in relation to how you accept them, right? Or you'll choose to leave because it will no longer be a vibrational match.
and I found a third level that I'd love to unpack with you from like a metaphysical,
Sure.
spiritual perspective. And this was probably, I don't know, about 10 months or so after you and I had that podcast, after my relationship imploded. And this really it would download for me, it was a download, a message received where it really all clicked. And it was like IFS, like parts work. You mentioned like a part of me earlier. And it was like, sometimes these relationships, that other person that's bringing some, and this isn't necessarily a romantic relationship, but with that other person that's struggling with something, and it's like just so in your face, I realized it was a physical manifestation of one of my internal parts. And
Yeah.
when I realized that, yeah, because that's what you've been saying. But when I had that like download come through for me, like on
Yeah.
my own language or whatever, it's like, whoa, I went, can I play with this? So instead of telling that other person, like, oh, this is actually something that I have unresolved, what you're talking about, no wonder why you're bringing this to me. I started to do my own inner work, didn't say anything to this other person.
Yeah.
They came to me about a week or two later, and it was totally resolved. So
Mhm.
that just blew my mind. So from like a spiritual, metaphysical perspective, when we do our work, there's
Yeah.
also the possibility that that other
They will
person can
change.
change because it's
Yeah.
resolved in you now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So first level is they will change. Second level is your relationship with them will change. Or third level is you leave because it's no longer in alignment. And I would also say, just add one other dimension, is many times relationships are often karma. We draw the person into our lives because we and them have some karma to resolve. And certain dynamics we draw karmically because there's an opportunity for us to navigate an experience or a situation that can be delicate, that gives us an opportunity to choose something, do something, heal something, go through it differently than, let's say, we've done before, or even our parents did it. And so often we will attract sometimes a situation or a dynamic that is part of our sort of soul's lesson based on our history and childhood and karma. And if there is a thing as past lives, but let's just stay with our own life experience, that gives us an opportunity to learn a lesson and resolve karma. And many times we will draw in certain relationships that create, how can I explain this? That the situation and circumstance of the relationship puts us in a situation energetically of something that we have not resolved, right? That is like a soul setup, that the only way to move through the relationship is to actually learn that lesson. As an example, maybe I'm just going to make this up. Maybe you're let me give a personal example. I grew up always caretaking for my mother and being her emotional husband and loving her, and she would always cry, and I would take care of her, save my mother. I basically saved my mother. I was her savior. So I grew up with, what kind of women you think I attracted?
Women that need saving.
Women that needed saving. And so
Yeah.
long as a woman kind of needed saving, I somehow felt attracted to her. It's like, she's my type. I mean, I wasn't saying, yeah, I want a woman to save, but it's just when she had that energy, that vibration, then I was attracted, because you see, every single thing that happens to us from childhood is stored in our nervous system. It is patterned in our nervous system. So here I am, in relationship with my mom. I love my mom deeply. She is my love, my first love. I love her. Yet she had this weakness. She was always crying. She was always feeling like a victim. She was always feeling disempowered. She was always in tears. I was always saving her. So for me, it felt like, oh, the feminine is weak. The feminine is a victim. The feminine. So I go out into life, 20s, 30s, and I meet a woman that looks different than my mother, but energetically carries that vibration of victimness, of weakness, of disempowerment. And somehow I meet her, and there's a resonance in the nervous system where all of a sudden you start saying, oh, I'm attracted to this person. Oh, I feel familiar. Oh, this is the one. Oh my God. And it's really that your stuff and their stuff match. And that creates a familiarity. And that familiarity often can feel like love, like, oh, I love you. But really, it's familiarity. They do feel familiar. It's your mom energetically in some way. And so I think often we will attract situations that replicate energetic experiences so that we have the opportunity to heal and move through it and make different choices in it or make different choices away from it. And I remember right before I met my wife, I was in a relationship with a woman, and she had this pattern. And there was a moment when I realized, wow, she's not going to work through this for herself. And I had to shift myself, do a layer of healing, and I made a choice to no longer continue this relationship. And for me, it was like a graduation test, of saying, you know what? Oh, I no longer choose this experience with the feminine. And so sometimes part of the mirror is we will attract mirror experiences to give us a choice to work through and heal and choose something different. And there's the art. Now, when two people understand the underlying purpose of relationship, which is healing and evolution and learning the lessons, and it's about evolution, then when your shit is activated and their stuff is activated, then rather than just running or blaming or being unconscious, you can hold hands together and go through it together almost as a yoga and work through and really heal the deeper layers when it comes to the relationship. Then you understand relationship is about evolution. So shit's going to come up and your shit's going to get triggered.
Yeah.
Sometimes their deeper shit's going to get triggered. That's not a reason to run or it doesn't work. That's if you're both committed and there is a foundation of compatibility. If you're both willing, that is an opportunity for you to both heal through this dynamic so that you can recreate your relationship to the internal dynamic. And that's when you shift the karma.
Mm-hmm. So good. So good. A lot of things, a lot of ground was covered there. And one of the things that I just want to highlight or double click on was the distinction between familiarity and love. And that is so well said.
You know what happens is, right? Because everything that happens to us is stored in our nervous system. That is abusive or gone a lot unavailable. ouch, it gets patterned in our nervous system. We're not conscious. We're just, from age 0 to 7, we're in a state of hypnosis, and we're so susceptible that that energy gets imprinted. So now love feels unavailable. Love feels unattainable. You go out into a relationship, go out into the world, and the guy that is available to you as a woman, as an example, you're like, no, he's not my type. I don't know. Just, I don't feel the connection. I don't feel the chemistry with this guy. Nah. But the guy who's like the unavailable dude that obviously doesn't have unavailable on his forehead, but unavailable in his inner energy, is the one guy you're just so hot and attracted to, and he's like the one. It's like this vibrational pull. So I tell people what that will feel like is a charge, is a polarity, is a pull, right? Is an activation, and you'll often go, "Whoa, love at first sight." Whoa, I'm so in love with this person. Whoa, and so when you feel that explosive, like boom, attraction, watch out. That is the sign to breathe. You start off breathing, right? Breathe, slow down, come into the present moment. Because when you come in contact with that person, your nervous system starts resonating, and then you go into a trance. All of a sudden, you go into a trance. You're back at age 5. You think you're here, but you're not seeing clearly. You have been activated, and you're back there. And so if you think you're in love, you think it's chemistry. Oh, there's so much chemistry. It's shitistry. Your shit matches their shit, and that pulls you together, and it feels like a magnet. But also there's a deep part of your own subconscious that has an impulse to heal. So that's what pulls you into that dynamic and relationship. And so when you feel that like bing of like instant something, breathe and slow down. Because I would say 98% of the time, it's going to be your unconscious, unresolved stuff that is pulling you together. Breathe, slow down, connect to your body, and take it slow. Don't rush in. Don't jump in. Because if we're all honest, and we look at the relationships where we felt that instant explosion, how many of those people are we actually married to or in relationship with right now? I can tell you, I'm not. I'm not. Like the woman I'm with right now, who I love dearly and is just my everything. I didn't feel that boom when I first met her, but I started to feel a gentle growing something. And by the third time, I felt like I feel something. It was pulling, but it wasn't that boom, kaboom, that just clearly wasn't going to work. So we have to be conscious and aware so that we can be discerning in seeing, is this relationship going to actually work? There are 3 pillars of a relationship. I don't know if we talked about this last time, but 3 pillars of a relationship. The first pillar you have to have is connection. Most people base relationship just on connection. Sam, I feel this connection. I feel a connection. That's great, but that's not enough. Connection can be love. Oh, I'm in love. Love ain't enough for a relationship. Lust. Most people are making decisions based on lust. When I ask a guy, well, why did you ask her out? She was hot. That's not enough. That doesn't base a relationship. So
Wait, but lust is a pillar, though?
lust is part of connection, right?
Oh, got it. Okay, got it.
The sexual connection, the physical connection, the mental. We got a connection. Soul connection, love connection. We have a connection. Yes, you do have to have a connection and relationship, but love by itself is not enough to make a relationship work. Let me repeat, everyone. Love is not enough. So you need love as in the different forms of connection. Then you need consciousness. Consciousness is the state of your internal development, the state of your consciousness, where 2 people growing at a similar rate, a similar vibration, being at a similar consciousness. You don't have to be growing in exactly the same way, as in I do yoga, you do yoga. It could be completely different. But if one person is not willing to take responsibility and do their inner healing and do their inner work and grow and evolve, then over time, likely you will outgrow them and probably will not be in a similar enough level of consciousness where the relationship will just get lopsided and won't work. It's like when you come together, it's like a balloon. And if one person just grows and evolves, the other person doesn't, it puts pressure on the balloon and the balloon bursts. So there does have to be again, it doesn't have to be in exactly the same way, but two people do have to be evolving and growing in a similar-ish enough direction in a similar rate. Otherwise, you see many relationships, we just grew apart. We grew in different directions, right? And so there's a level of consciousness. So two people.
If I could ask a clarifying question, what I mentioned earlier with my little experiment that I've done a few times, I haven't done it in a romantic relationship, just more in like situations with different people that have entered into my life. Now, am I crazy, or is it possible that in that relationship where one person's not doing their work and one person's balloon is lifting up and expanding, if that one person is really going deep on the inner work and seeing what's coming up in them, is that enough potentially to just shift the other person because you're doing your own inner work without them actually doing the work, or just a small
I mean, is anything possible? Yeah. Is it possible that this piece of trash that I'm holding, I drop it here, and it ends up from my house, it ends up in a slum in Mumbai? Yeah, it's possible it ends up in Mumbai, but is it likely?
So you're telling me there's a chance.
Probably
So
not
you're
a
telling me
high
there's
possibility, right? Anything is possible in the universe, but the possibility, like I could drop this, step on it, get on a plane, it's stuck to my foot, I fly to India, and there it is. It's possible, but the likelihood of it isn't that. Is it possible I could eat like shit, never work out, never exercise, don't drink water, only eat Big Macs, have a six-pack, and be incredibly vibrant, energetic, and healthy? I guess it's possible, but not so likely in the realm of things.
All right. So moving on then. Number 2 is consciousness. The
You
first
need consciousness. Two people moving in a similar direction, doing a level of work, even if it's differently. The third level is compatibility. Compatibility in relationship is important, where you and another person are compatible. There's mental compatibility, emotional compatibility, communication compatibility, spiritual compatibility. We could get to the surface level. Dietary compatibility, vegan, beef eater, carnivore, political compatibility. These are more superficial levels of compatibility. And so I think what helps purpose, two people going in a similar purpose where there's a compatibility. Compatibility doesn't have to equal sameness. It can be complementary. My wife and I were very different humans, but we're very compatible and very complementary. It's like yin yang. And so compatibility doesn't mean you believe what I believe and you eat what I believe and you meditate how I meditate, but there has to be an underlying compatibility of core values where there's a deep understanding of, our values align. And then from there, what levels of compatibility? And that's also part of a choice. Two people doing completely different careers, two people working together. Some of that's a choice based on people's karma and what they choose. It's like, are we going to be working together, building a business? So there's more compatibility in the purpose side of things. So, but I do believe that compatibility is key. When you have compatibility, one of the things that that work with my wife and I is because we're compatible. There's many things that just work. It just, the way she is. I mean, obviously, there's some way she is that maybe frustrate me in moments, but overall, the way she is just kind of works for me. It just kind of works. And vice versa, the way I am overall, when I'm not driving her crazy, right? It just kind of works. She just knows how to handle my intensity and my personality, just without effort. It's just natural for her. Maybe it's because of her father was a strong character and da-da-da. But compatibility is a key, because without that, things can get... There are some people that you just are not compatible with. And you can force it and force it and force it. I mean, maybe it works, but it's a grind and it will take so much of your energy. So you want to feel like, one reason I knew that things would work with her is I just felt like it was zero effort to be around her and be myself, like zero. There was nothing. The first time I had a date with my wife, I just felt like very strangely comfortable in a good way. And so that showed me a level of compatibility. So we got connection, consciousness, compatibility. And I think these are three pillars that one can look for in relationship.
Those pillars are awesome. So thank you for unpacking each of those. And at the end there, you just mentioned with your wife, there's this certain layer of comfort. And I think there's a really good distinction here, because notice Kute's energy there and talking about that, because what people might be thinking about is like, wait, I thought there's a distinction between love and familiarity. And I can feel it in your energy when you say that. It's not the big explosion of fireworks when we first like meet someone and we're like, this is it, right? That comfort is different than that.
It was a peace, for me, it was a peace that I felt in the beginning. On the third date, I had a strange feeling. She is the one. I had a very, very distinct,
but not like the overwhelming big one.
It wasn't necessarily like fire, boom,
It's like a hint from your intuition, like a whisper.
Yeah, it
right?
was like, this feels very strange. It feels very calm. And could it really be? But it's kind of, I've been wrong before, but something from a very deep place felt right. And I couldn't deny that. I mean, I could fight it, but I couldn't deny it. And that was the difference. There wasn't the sort of, addictive charge to the feeling. It just felt very peaceful. Like, kind of very normal and very matter of fact, Like even when I married her, it was like, why does this feel weirdly normal? Shouldn't it feel more? It just felt like, of course, you brush your teeth, you wake up. It's like normal, part of life, And what I really saw and what I would encourage people is dating someone and having a fun time is different than a sustained relationship. Having a sustained relationship is a different skill, And so it's how do you feel with someone in the everyday? That is the key. How do you feel with someone the 90% of time, the 95% of time that you're not on vacation? How does it feel? Because the 5% of your time when you're on vacation, you can have fun with anybody.
Yeah.
But the 90% of the time when you don't feel great, when you feel tired, when you argue, how do you argue? How do you argue? How do you know when you're hungry? Like the 90% of life, which is the everyday mundane stuff, how's that? Because if that is good, that can maybe be a level of compatibility and show you something. And that's also how I knew, because the everyday, how did I say this the other day? My worst day with my wife was often better than the best day with the wrong person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Totally. And this just feels normal. Just feels, of course.
I
love that.
love
And I think that's the key. When you feel the naturalness with someone, it's a sign.
Well, super happy to hear that, because that's a new update since the last time we spoke. How long have you guys been married?
It's been a few years. We've been together.
Okay, so we just didn't touch on it.
Going on almost 4 years, maybe.
But you have a kid now, a 2-year-old, right?
Almost 2-year-old, 20-month-old son who's just the joy of life.
If you're looking for a powerful and transformative experience for your next event, consider bringing in Sam Kabert as a keynote speaker. Sam's message of soul life balance and his expertise in mental health and mindfulness resonate deeply with audiences. He not only inspires with his story, but also offers practical tools like breathwork to help attendees regulate their emotions and reconnect with themselves. You can even have Sam lead a guided breathwork journey, creating a truly unforgettable experience. To learn more or book Sam for your event, check out the link in the show notes to book a call with Sam now.
That's amazing. So this gets into this concept of weirdly normal. I love that you said weirdly normal because a
Yeah.
term my mom's been talking about is strangely normal.
Strange
So
though.
yeah, and which is the first time I heard that. And she loves saying this because she loves like oxymorons or just so fascinated by it, whatever.
Mm.
And my relationship that blew up 2 years ago when we spoke in February of, it was probably to this date 2 years ago when the relationship blew up, like the time of you and I recording right now.
Mm.
Um, her and I didn't speak for almost 2 years, just like emails. We saw each other twice, but now we're reconnecting because she had my son and he's 17 months now. And I've been getting to know him, and we're reconnecting with her and
So
her.
you had a child together.
Yeah, and when she got pregnant, her trauma response, I mean, I don't want to get into all that, but there was different things that came up and it got messy, put it that way.
Mm, mm,
So I'm
mm.
just getting to meet my son now. And now that we're connecting again, the term my mom's using is this is strangely normal because when I look at all of these pillars of the relationship, I see connection, I see consciousness, I see compatibility. The one piece that I see was slacking or lacking a little bit was the consciousness part,
Yeah.
and that kind of goes to my line of questioning about the one person doing the work, but not the
Yeah.
other.
Look. Here's the thing. Here's what I'll say. Right. My wife and I are vastly different, and your person doesn't have to do the work in the same way you do it. That's the thing. I do breath work. She does breath work. I do 17 hours. She does. She may not do it. Your person or partner may not do the work in the same way. But what is important is that they are willing, they are open, and they take responsibility. This is key. They might do it differently and their path might look different, but this is really key. This is really key. So it may not look the same. Like love is not sameness, but where things will be challenged is if they're not willing to explore. If they're like, I'm not willing to look at that, then they're always going to be reactive or blaming and pointing. And that will become challenging because they're always going to be projecting a victim, taking no responsibility, abdicating all responsibility. And that's when things get difficult and challenging.
Yeah, and to your point about it's not going to look the same for everyone, part of that is time, right?
Yeah.
So I think my question for you now as we start to begin to wrap this up is how do you let someone back into your life?
How do you let someone back into your life?
Maybe not
So,
let, but how do you
in
bring,
terms of a relationship, in terms of,
not romantic, just in general?
I
I think
think,
a lot of us,
well, I do think that first, I think it requires an honest conversation before you just, yeah, let's come back. A really honest, real conversation. And again, depends on the circumstance. Maybe they did something, maybe, right? And so if you can have a really honest conversation with that person about what happened, about what didn't happen, about where they were at, about where you were at, and just be real with each other, because I think that if you have a conversation with someone, this is what is self-honoring to you. Because if you just let someone back into your life and they did some shit to you, then you are not honoring yourself and your energy. You're not valuing who you are, right? And so before you just let them back into your life, I think it's important that you have a conversation, discuss what was, hear their perspective, share your perspective, and see if number one, they're willing to take responsibility for their part in that. Because if they're not willing to take any responsibility and they're just, well, it's all you, it's going to be challenging. If they're willing to take responsibility, if they've had some self-reflection, and if through the conversation you see that they are sincere and they have genuinely shifted and evolved, then they're not at the same person or at the same level of consciousness that they did what they did or where things went off. Then maybe there's a possibility. And then feel what is their intention now for coming back into your life, for the relationship. And what is your intention? And I think if you can see, because trust has to be rebuilt. And the only way trust that can be rebuilt is through honesty, is through communication, is through real talk. And if you can see that they have reflected, if you can see that they are willing to make amends, if you can see that they're willing to take responsibility and that they've done some work to shift, and they have a genuine, sincere intention for the relationship with you, then it's not a guarantee, but then there is a possibility to say, okay, I love this person. I want to forgive and let go and let them back into my life and begin the process of rebuilding trust.
One of the things that I want to ask you about is love. Love is very tricky, and I think a lot of people on this path, you know, want to just send love to everyone,
Uh,
and then there's a lot of people that I think I'm a little bit more in this camp. It's like I have this piece of programming, like you have to earn my love. What are
yeah,
your thoughts? And I'm not talking about romantic love.
just love.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Um, Love is what you are. Love is your nature. Love is the nature of what we all are. We are all love, and that is all that there really is. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to let you come and just sleep in my house and hang out with me, my wife, and my kid, and my family, and da 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 da, let you into everything, right? Because there also has to be discernment, because not everyone is able or has the capacity, based on their pain, hurt, trauma, childhood, to show up in a way that is necessary. And that's okay. But that doesn't mean you can't love them and send them love. It just might not mean you come hang out in my house for a week. I always say I have a perfect relationship with everybody. I love everybody. Certain people I will not hang out with, though. And certain people I will choose to not have in my life. But I love them. They don't have to change. And I send them love. Send them love. And so I think you can still set boundaries and be loving.
Mm,
You can set your, like, being unconditional loving doesn't mean accepting nonsense, BS, and abuse. It might mean saying, hey, I really love you. How you're acting, or this doesn't work for me, but I love you. I may have to remove myself because every time we get around each other, you hit me over the head with a baseball bat. And maybe they can't help it because it's their pain, their response, their trauma. And it's okay. And so love is to accept where they are at, to not expect more from that person because they can't do more in that moment based on the level of their consciousness, their healing, their trauma, to accept where they're at, to acknowledge where they're at, to make peace with where they're at, and to just love them. But it might mean I love you from afar. And that is self-honoring to you and to them.
mm.
So,
Beautifully
so,
said.
so, so the loving doesn't have to stop, right? The loving doesn't have to stop. And I think
Yeah.
from that standpoint, it's powerful. Whoever you can't love controls you.
Oh, well said. Well said.
Whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Joe Biden, whether it's your ex, whether it's your mom, whether it's your grandfather, whoever it is. And I think as human beings, we are here to learn how to love. But some people, you might choose to say, I'll love you from afar.
Yeah, that's a good, so good there. And I love the piece, discernment. That's what it all boils down to.
So yes, in terms of earning money, yes, some people will you got to earn the trust because
Yeah.
they have not earned it. I can love you, but I'm not going to just give you all of my trust.
Yeah, it's a lot of what I talk about with like plant medicines and things like that. The feminine, the masculine, the intuition, but also having discernment. So, anyways, Kute, this has been so awesome to reconnect with you, go deep on relationships.
I wish you before you say what you're about to say. I hope
Yeah.
it's okay for me to say this, but as a father, I wish you so much grace and joy and blessings, because regardless of what is happening with you and the mother, your son, your father, your child, they need you. I don't care what anyone says, they need you. when I really realized it, like, I mean, I'm present for my son. I was in LA because we moved. I was in LA doing an event last week, and I was, on the phone with my son, FaceTiming. And the moment I walked through the door and he saw my face, he just lit up and jumped. And then he started crying, weeping, because kids aren't able to process things. But he realized in that moment how much he had missed me, how much he needed. And he just wept in his mother's arms when I was there. But kids aren't able to articulate that. And so us as mothers, as fathers, as parents, being in our children's lives is everything, is the healing. And so I just wish you so many blessings and so much grace for you and your child.
Well, I received that. Thank you so much, Kute. And I also send you so many blessings in your journey, as well as being a father to your son. And yeah, it's been beautiful, and everything's gone great. And so I think our situation just needed some time, and sometimes that happens, and getting on track. So it's all good. So thank you. Thank you. And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you?
Yeah, a few ways. Number one, I would say my website, kuteblackson.com, Kute Blackson.com. You can go there, enter your name and your email to receive a free 3-part video series on how to find your purpose. This way, you'll also receive updates. I'm doing different events all around the place in the next months. And depending on when you listen to this conversation, I've done retreats in Bali and India and intensive transformational seminars and weekends. And so I would love to meet you at one of my events. Just check out the schedule there. We'll also, I'm sure, put some links in the show notes, but check out the website, kuteblackson.com. My book, The Magic of Surrender. Instagram, Kute Blackson. Say hello there. And yeah, great to connect.
Sounds great. Yeah, guys, all the links are in the show notes. Kute, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I sure did. And, it's always, I always feel a little bit vulnerable when I share bits and pieces of my own history or my own personal stuff going on. I think it's helpful. I try to do my best to not throw anyone under the bus, or no, that's not even the best way to say it, to be mindful of other people and what I share. And I think that's a struggle that a lot of us kind of are challenged with, because we, at least myself, like I'm kind of like an open book type of person, but it's like, well, if I'm going to share something, I'll share it from my lens and being mindful of other people. So I hope it came across that way. If you want to go deeper with Kute, he's absolutely incredible. His Instagram is great. He's always got motivational clips on there and very educational as well. If you want to go deeper with me, the best way to do so is to join my free breath club. That's where I lead breath work every single week. And this is a growing community. It's a great place to learn how to regulate your own nervous system and process things in real time, so that you can be a better partner in not only romantic relationships, but all the relationships in your life. Having said that, thanks so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode of the Soul Seeker podcast. Thank you so much for listening to the very end. I hope you dug this podcast just as much as I enjoyed it. If you got anything at all, please, if you could just do me a favor and leave a 5-star review wherever you listen to this podcast, it helps the show grow. So thank you for considering to leave a review. If you want to go deeper with Sultara or Elan, you can find the links to connect with them in the show notes. And if you want to work with me, the best way to work with me, the easiest way to work with me is the free way, and that's by joining the Breath Club. The link to the Breath Club is in the show notes. And also know that I'm available for one-on-one support, that is coaching and guidance, as well as keynotes and breathwork journeys for conferences and events. Thank you so much, and I will see you on the next episode of The Soul Seeker.